all our other former cricketers who are here and friends of Amrit and our CCI president and all our board members. I would now like to call upon Mr. Gavaskar to come up along with Mr. Amrit Mathur, Mr. Harsha Bhogle and Mr. Piyush Pandey to unveil the book before we have our panel discussion here.
अरे यार फोटो ओ फोटो स्टील
अरे भाई बैठ जाओ फोटो
दोस्त ब्राउन शर्ट
वीडियो नहीं मिला सर राजेश भाई एक्सक्यूज मी सर
I'd now like to invite Harsha to say a few words and take the evening forward.
Thank you Sachin. I keep pulling Sachin's leg all the time, but there's one thing I can never do, which is contest his love for the game. So well done. And it's great to be in this hall. This hall loves cricket still, no? Every time I come to this hall, I feel this love for cricket. But before we start on the book, I want to congratulate whoever chose those photographs. There's a reason that my generation, and that includes Amrit, grew up idolizing a batter, and just see that photograph at the bottom, and that's the reason why. The photograph on the top is fine, but the photograph on the bottom. So maybe when it's his turn, he will tell us about that photograph, because I know he remembers. Only one person in this room has the right to contest anything that SMG does, and that is Milind in the front row, which he has already done. But a word about Amrit, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for the number of years I've lost track of. We often say about people that they've got a ringside view of Indian cricket. Some of us have been given that title as well. We've been on the fringes. Here's someone who was actually in the middle of some path-breaking things that were happening in our cricket, but you never know. There was no grandstanding. There was no, I was there, I know it all. There were no scoops leaked somewhere. It was all done with the dignity of the times. And that is why a lot of us, when Amrit said, I've done a book, we said, I don't care where it is we are coming. Because there was always a certain amount of class associated with Amrit. He's even starting to look like one of our idols, Tiger. Amrit's been part of history, but the one tour that I really do want to talk to him about was one that I was on as a pretty young person myself, working my backside off. But I don't think I did anywhere near as close as Amrit did. 36. Amrit, did I get the year right? 36 when India went to South Africa in 1992. Less? You look less. 36 for a young man on a tour where many things could have gone wrong. This was a tour where Indians didn't have visas before going. We didn't have diplomatic ties for a long time, didn't have even at the time at which we landed. And then to negotiate everything that was happening, walking a political tightrope, playing a difficult cricket series was I thought, an astounding job. Then 2004, then Pilcom. Actually, I think we don't write enough history in India ourselves. I think I'm culpable in that as well, but we don't write enough history. Amrit hasn't written the history. It's not his style to write history. He's just dropped us little teasers here and there in his style. And I purposely spoke ye aise hua in Hindi because long before English became very prolific, Amrit had this habit in his newspaper columns of dropping the right Hindi word to explain exactly what he wanted to say. So he's given us a little glimpse of all that he had a ringside view of in all these years, and we're going to talk to him about all that, along with someone who didn't have to have a ringside view because he was actually making it himself. So it's good to have someone with a ringside view of history and someone who was writing history, making history with shots that other than Milind, everyone is going to gawk over. SNG, all yours. Oh, sorry, Amrit first. because Sachin's going to get something for SMG first. Sachin, have you got the Parle Ji?
Thanks, Akshay. And Sunny is the opener, but I'm getting a chance to go ahead of him today. At the CCI, it's great to be here. And one always feels the presence of Raj Singh here. You walk in and the first thing you remember is Raj Singh ji, Rajbhai. What an outstanding, passionate ambassador of Indian cricket. And you can't come here and not remember him. What other memory I have of the CCI is, I saw a film called Love Marriage. Devanand was a cricketer. He made a big score at the CCI. And after a while, he goes to the heroine Bala Sinha, declares himself out and says, "Mera dil leg before ho gaya." That must be the first instance of a batsman happily agreeing to an LB decision. So I think Devanand is responsible for upholding the spirit of the game. So tribute to him. Anyway, more seriously, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have Sunny here. And we know about his brilliance and his mastery. And I put those photographs there because all you have to explain or say about Sunny is there. That is perfection, that is poetry, that is art and science. So Sunny, fantastic. I think Sunny made 10,122 runs, and with each run, respect for Indian cricket grew. You know, he gave India the respect, and that reflected in the runs he made. It's said that in those days, Indian cricket in batting was not at its best. There was much of what was called "dundo dundo re sajna." This is a term Sunny uses himself while batting. But Sunny had a bat which had only a middle. So phenomenal. Thank you very much, sir, for coming here and launching the book. Harsha also. Harsha said we go back a long way. Yes, we do. We crossed our paths, I think, early 92 in Australia, then in South Africa. But actually much before that. I was Secretary of Railway Sports and we were inaugurating a new hockey stadium in Gwalior. And we needed some help in the sponsorship. So we approached Sunny as PMG to find us a sponsor, which he did. Then he deputed a young executive, Harsha Bhogale, to come to Gwalior to make sure everything was all right. This was, I think, late 1980s. Yeah, that was the inauguration of the hockey stadium at Gwalior because of Mr. Sindhya, and Harsha was there. So I think we go back a long way. More seriously, the book is about my association with Indian cricket. And this association happened by accident. It was not supposed to be. I was a young officer, Mr. Sindhya was the railway minister, I got to know him. And he sort of opened the door for me. He put me in a position which gave me access to the BCCI. He effectively gave me a cricket credit card with lifelong validity, which I'm still using. And he was an extraordinary man, very generous, very supportive. And I'm grateful that he found me worthy of his trust for such a long time. So I owe a lot to him, and my entire sort of association, connect with cricket is entirely because of him. This book is not about, it's not my story. It's not even the story of Indian cricket. It is the story of what I saw myself, what I participated in as an observer, and it's a first-hand accurate account. So it's not what somebody told me over the bar or over a drink or something. It's actually what I saw, and I met people, what I remember, I wrote it down. It was difficult to start writing a book, and I was very skeptical. Koi padhega, who's interested in me? I have no gyan to give. I have no breaking news or scandal to reveal. There is no message that the nation wants to know from me. So lots of doubts. But later I realized that I have been fortunate to be in a position where I have seen things. I have seen many iconic moments of Indian cricket. I saw, for instance, there was a book launched in 1984, Idols, in Delhi. That was after your Kanpur games, where that was not your best test match. But I remember that book launch where Lloyd at, I think, Prakati Maidan, Delhi said, Sunny's at a bad game, but Sunny's a master, who knows what happens in Delhi. And sure enough, in Delhi, 2900 of Sunny, 100 made in, I think, 96 balls. So that's how Sorry? 92, sorry. Plus 72 guaranteed. So, that's how it is. You have a very ordinary game at Kanpur. Lloyd says, Sunny is the champion. And true enough, 2 days later, that phenomenal innings. I also saw him at Bangalore, his last game. And that's one of the mysteries of Indian cricket. What happened in 96? Did he actually nick Tausif? Iqbal Qasim. Did you actually nick Iqbal Qasim in 96? He's not telling after all these years. Well, I asked Imran Khan what happened. And actually, you should read this in the book and I should not say it. But Imran said he was not out. So that's on record, he said he was not out. But that was an epic inning. 96 when I think the team made 200. And that was a strange game because Salim Jafar picked as a pace bowler, didn't bowl a single ball in 2 innings. Imran didn't bowl in 1 innings. I think Kapil bowled 5 overs or something. And strange game, everybody went wrong on the wicket. Not Mr. Gavaskar, who made 96. And another thing which I'm sort of grateful to Sunny for is, in 1987 as a young journalist looking for some assignments to cover the World Cup in Pakistan. So I again approached PMT, काम दिलाओ, पैसे दिलाओ to fund my trip. So he fixed up that I will write Imran's columns. I'll ghost Imran's columns for Pakistan. Now, Imran in those days in Pakistan was the most popular and powerful man. You couldn't approach and find Imran Khan. Well, anyway, the first game was in Hyderabad Singh. I reached there, Imran is in the middle of 500 people in practice. I introduced myself, I have come and I'm supposed to write your columns. Sunny must have spoken to you. He said, Sunny ne baat kari. Karna hai. So I said, okay, we'll decide a time. Just as I was leaving, he shouted in a voice which could be heard, I think, even in Lahore. मेरे को पैसे कितने मिल रहे हैं? I said, please ask Sunny about that. So that's some of the things about Sunny. I've also been lucky to be at some important moments of Indian cricket. For instance, Harsha mentioned the 1992 tour. First time Sachin was declared run out in Durban through a television replay. Also in 2002 at NatWest final when Saurav did what he did and which has been inspiring Salman Khan ever since. So, and also 2004 Multan, Viru made that 300. So I've been fortunate, I've been around some important times, so I decided to write. But a book is a mixture of, a lot of it is written as a tour diary. What happens on a tour, what happens on a day-to-day basis, on a match-to-match basis, what happens off-field. For instance, who sits where in a team bus? Does Sachin have an assigned place? How does Sachin choose his corner in the dressing room? What kind of fines are imposed for coming late? I think Sanjay is here, Sanjay Bangar is around. Yeah. So I think Sanjay had the duty on other tours to collect fines. So he was the appointed vasool karne wala aadmi. Ki jo late aayega, kaise Sanjay collect karega. So there is stuff like that. There is some information about table tennis tournaments in the team room, putting competitions and the corridors of hotel. But there's also some serious stuff. For instance, the team meeting over here. So there will be a discussion on what line to bowl to Inzamam, whether the final leg should be fine or square. Also, whether cap should stand close at short cover or mid-wicket. Also, a simple thing like, how do you choose a ball when you go into field? The umpire comes and drops 12 balls on your dressing room, and you select one. So there's a process how you select a ball. So there is technical stuff in the book, and there is this so-called trivia in the book. And I think some of it will be interesting. I found it very interesting, and it was quite fascinating to sit through a team meeting with professionals discussing, details of how to approach a game, strategy, etc. And I would be an observer, keep silent. I think John Wright, who was manager on most of the tours, used to play a prank on me. After the meeting and end, he'd say, Amrit, do you have something to say? So, hoping I'll say something stupid in the middle of a technical discussion among experts. But I was not so stupid. I kept my mouth shut and just heard what was happening. And more important, I made notes. So the tour diaries have been written not from memory, but from the notes I kept. For instance, when you go for a team dinner, so how do you pay? Who pays? How do you decide? So occasionally it is you borrow Sachin Tendulkar's card, you pay on using it, and then you split it later. So I think there's a bit of this and a bit of that. And in the end, there are also certain profiles of eminent players and administrators whom I've had opportunity to interact with. But again, it's a personalized account. So if I'm writing about Sunny, if I'm writing about Tiger, it's not about Sunny the player or Sachin the player or Tiger the captain. It's about my personal experience, what I've learned and what's happened between them and me. For instance, just to give you an example about Tiger. Tiger was a very reluctant person when it came to attending a function like this. If you asked him, his first reaction would be, "Kisi tarah se bacho isse." If he had to go, he'd agree very reluctantly and set 2 ground rules. One, only half an hour. So quickly in, quickly out. Next, no speech. So अगर ये 2 conditions मंजूर हैं, फिर तो मैं आऊँगा, नहीं तो नहीं. Anyway, I think I've been fortunate to be given this opportunity. It's been very rewarding. And as I said, it was not meant to be. It was an accident. I consider myself a concussion substitute. वो किसी वजह से मौका मिल गया. And I even landed up at times in what is called close catching positions. So thank you very much. I hope whoever reads it enjoys it and we like it.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I think it's going to be a tremendous evening for the simple reason that what Amrit just told you is just what you would call the tip of the iceberg as far as cricketing experiences, cricketing stories, cricketing anecdotes are all about. And I think that is what you look for in a book. You don't want to know about career stats so much. You want to know what happened and how it happened, why it happened. And I think that's going to be part of the book. I've read a little bit of the book, not the whole book as yet. But going back many years ago, I think maybe about 40 odd years ago, when I first heard the name of Amrit Mathur, it was under a headline in a magazine, if I get the name of the magazine right, a magazine called UNCUT, and the headline was Captain Outrageous. Now, Captain Outrageous was referring to me as the captain of the Indian team in Australia, where in the Sydney Test, which we lost. And as captain, having won the toss, I opted to bat. And we were skittled out for not too many, and then the Australians scored runs, etc. But of course, why was I called Captain Outrageous? Is because I opted to bat on what was, according to many sources, including the one mentioned earlier on over here, as being pretty knowledgeable about the game. Who was at that particular point of time doing commentary for the All India Radio. He had come in to do commentary for All India Radio. And he must have called perhaps that time, it was about 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning in Sydney for the game to start. He would have probably called England, called his friend Colin and said, "Hello, Sunil has won the toss and he has opted to bat. So what do you think?" And Colin must have been busy, must have been fast asleep, and he said, "Oh, no, that's not correct." And so that was taken by this particular gentleman who Amrit spoke very glowingly about at the start of his speech. That was then used by him in the All India commentary, radio commentary, to suggest that the pitch was damp, etc., etc. I don't even know whether he had gone to the pitch to have a look whether the pitch was damp or not. It was the first day of a test match, and of course in those days, you have a little bit of grass on the surface, and those were the days when we You didn't have a cook over the ball. The ball moved around a little bit. So that, and I'm saying to myself, this Amrit Mathur, I then found out he hadn't actually been anywhere in Australia at that stage. I said he's sitting in New Delhi, and he's writing this. And of course, later on, you come to know that headlines are not in the hands of the person who writes a column, but it is the publisher or the editor who decides on the headline. So that was my first introduction to Amrit Mathur. It wasn't the most pleasant of introductions. I was waiting to catch up with him at some stage. But of course, I think what you would have noticed over your interaction with him is he's got a pretty disarming way about him. And so, we hit it off, and we've been, good friends ever since. When the invitation came, the invitation said for the release of the book, and I was actually relieved to read that word release, despite the fact that in his talk just now, a little before me, he used the word launching the book. Now, the book has already been launched in New Delhi. There was another one in Bengaluru a week, 10 days ago. And thankfully, while he used the word launch, it was in the invitation that went to everybody, the word used was release. Because if he had used the word launch in that invitation card, I would have had to say that you had more launches than ISRO has had. So there was a book I remember Clive Lloyd releasing many years ago, which again, it was a launch, and that was about the 6th or the 7th launch in different cities, and actually that's where I actually am picking that up from, where he actually said, hello, you had more launches than in Cape Canaveral in USA. But you almost stopped there. Today, it's the third launch, and I believe you're having a launch stroke release in Kolkata. But I think it'll be worth it. Worth it because I think it makes sense. Makes sense to be able to go to different cities, to be able to get people to tell and to read about the experiences. Because this is something which not everybody is fortunate to do. To be able to be, in the middle of the action, in the sense that you're there in the change room, you're seeing people react to situations, you're seeing people, some of the biggest names in the game, how they cope with pressure, how they release pressure. I know you probably, I don't know whether you mentioned about people coming back after getting a bad call and throwing their bats and kicked around, etc. I don't know whether you mentioned that, but these kind of things happen. And if you've been able to be there, you understand the players a lot better, because players are, after all, human. They're like everybody else. They have their own, fears, worries, concerns, and to be able to actually see that, firsthand, to be able to sit with them maybe occasionally and not say a word, just be somebody who's just sitting there listening, taking the brunt and absorbing it, but not really, because sometimes people have to vent, people have to come out with their frustrations. To be able to do that in the change room must have been a fantastic experience. Not the most enjoyable of experiences, but surely an experience from which you would have understood the psyche of being an India cricketer. I don't think there's any other cricket team in the world which is under as much pressure, the pressure of expectations like the Indian team. Because every match that the Indian team plays, the fans, the followers, not just in India but the Indian cricket followers all over the world expect and want the Indian team to win. And we all know in sport that sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But the pressure can be telling. And I think that is the pressure that the Indian team is currently experiencing, with everybody wanting them to win the Asia Cup, wanting them to win the World Cup, which is going to take place in a couple of in a month and a bit. But I think this is where we, as cricket followers, need to show a little bit more understanding. That there will be days that the team will not be able to play up to its potential. And let's keep our fingers crossed that if these days happen, they happen at the league stage and not at the knockout stage. And so therefore, with the cumulative prayers of all of us, I think we will be able to will and pray for India to win, not just the Asia Cup, but also the World Cup. We did, I think, as a nation, as a nation that follows sport, we did win 24 hours back or 48 hours back for Neeraj Chopra to win. I think all of us, we stayed up just to be able to watch, and we were praying. We had our fingers crossed, we had our hearts in our mouth, hoping that and praying that he would win, and he did. So this is what I request all of you to convey to other Indian sports lovers, to please do that, so that our team can go on to win both the Asia Cup as well as the World Cup in a month and a half. Thank you, Amrit, for asking me to come and release the book. I thought actually, when you said it's going to be in the CCI, and the title of the book was, Pitchside, that we might have to go to the middle of the pitch and release the book over there in the middle of the pitch. But I think this is a far more congenial atmosphere here to be able to meet up with so many people. Also, of course, fortunately, the CCI doesn't have the kind of restrictions that the home of English cricket has, where nobody can go on the grass. You've got a picture in that, keep off the grass kind of, you've got a picture in that, say keep off the grass. So that doesn't happen. But that's because we love our cricket, we love our sport, and we're also fortunate to have people like Amrit, who have been with Indian cricket. They've had a role to play with Indian cricket. I don't think, apart from Fateh Singh Rao Gaikwad, there's been a younger manager of the Indian team. It's easier to relate to somebody who you can be on first name terms with, because of there's not much of an age gap, and I think that is what Amrit brought to the managership of the Indian team. I'm sure the players would have been very happy to be able to come to you. Otherwise, there's always just a little bit of a distance that youngsters keep out of respect. Maybe not out of respect for of the senior players, but I think Amrit brought a different role to the Indian managership, and he's performed it absolutely brilliantly. So starting from a person who probably didn't know whether the pitch was wet or not in Sydney, to writing a book, Pitchside. So it's a great, wonderful turnaround. I want to congratulate you on the book. I want to wish you all the very best. I hope this is read by many people, because I think this is, certainly from whatever I've read so far, this is a book worth reading. One or two inaccuracies over there, but that is for later. Something to do about the number of shoes that I have. I read that was 100%, 200,000% totally inaccurate. So don't believe everything that you read about me. But thank you all. I don't want to keep you away from getting hold of the book. And thank you all for coming here. Thanks so much. And Amrit, all the best.
See, the problem with generating large numbers is whether you look at number of test hundreds, whether you look at number of test matches, whether you look at number of runs, it's still a large number of shoes. So I won't ask you how many shoes there were, but I want to talk a little bit more about the book and this extraordinary opportunity that Amrit had to be Pitchside while a lot of things were happening. I must admit, when I went to South Africa in 1992, there were some of us there who were in this room as well, and it was a journey into the unknown. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't have visas. We just had a little sticker put, knew nothing about the country. Some of us had read Alan Paton's Cry the Beloved Country, so we knew about Johannesburg as this big bad city. And there's this young, dapper-looking manager, and I said, how is he going to handle everything? Because that was as much a political tour as it was a cricketing tour. So tell us about handling some of the pressures, the political pressures as well as the cricketing pressures. I mean, I remember we were in Bloemfontein once, in the town hall in Bloemfontein, and I was told that was the largest congregation of brown people ever in the town hall, because brown people are not allowed inside. So that just gives you an idea of how politically sensitive the tour was. F.W. de Klerk was still there. Nelson Mandela was not yet the president. So how easy or difficult was that? And given the fact that we've had traditional links with African National Congress.
Well, it was a political minefield. As you said, apartheid was breaking down. Mandela had been released. De Klerk was still president. We didn't have relations with South Africa. We didn't have the government. Our passports were marked. Our passports were marked not valid for South Africa. And there's nobody there to guide us about anything. And there's always this tightrope walk between being with the ANC and meeting up with Mandela and showing solidarity with the emerging political situation. At the same time, keeping a distance from de Klerk. And I remember one particular incident where it became rather sensitive. We asked for a meeting with Mandela, which was immediately granted, and we all went with the team to meet him, and he was completely gracious. He spoke about Gandhi, and he was very welcoming and warm, and you felt that you were in the presence of somebody extraordinary. Immediately after that, there was a test match, or some game, and de Klerk wanted to meet the Indian team. Now, we didn't know what to do. We were not supposed to be seen with de Klerk. So I checked with Ali Bakar for guidance, because there's nobody from the Foreign Office in South Africa to assist us. So Ali said, listen, you can't do this. You can't be seen publicly to meet him. At the same time, how do you say no to the president? So ultimately, what was decided was that de Klerk would come to the dressing room for 5 minutes, shake hands, no cameras, and go away. So that's what happened. But it was very sensitive politically, and I think everybody remembers that there was this huge expectation that a non-white team has come and maybe it will avenge all the atrocity and all the oppression the non-whites have gone through. So there was this massive political undertone to the tour. Unfortunately, the tour didn't go very well for the Indian team. We went into what was called politically sensitive place. At the same time, the cricket itself was like playing team patti. Nobody knew anything. We had no idea about the players, the venues, pitches, conditions. And I remember the first team meeting, somebody actually got up and asked, "Ye Kepler kaun hai?" Kepler was captain there. And he played for Australia. He played made 100, whatever. And that was the level of ignorance. We were completely unprepared. There was no camp before the tour. There was no support staff. I think Dr. Ali Rani is here. So we had the Ali's there. We were a team of 17 with 14 team members. Ajit Wadekar is the coach, me and Ali. Now we have a support staff of 20. So very often Ali and I would be helping out with the fielding drills. So that's the level of the cricket preparation and things on. Another thing that I think Sunny is very aware of. We reached South Africa and the playing conditions were not sorted. We were told, "Jaake baat kar lena, kar lena." But can you imagine something like that happening now? That every minute detail of a tour is agreed in advance, contractually put down, signed off, and there, we said, "Jaake dekh lena." And sure enough, when we reached there, Ali threw googlies at us. One, he mentioned this thing about the television, acting, decision maker in terms of line calls. Then he also said maybe there should be 3 umpires, and 2 would stand in a session, 1 would take a break so that nobody's tired. Now, when you were supposed to go to the team meeting, there are certain things I didn't know. I didn't know that Sunny had already held some discussion with Ali because Mr. Dalmi had asked him, but we were not aware of that. So we didn't know what had transpired between Ali and Sunny and things. Then when this thing came about 3 umpires and television replays, I asked Ajit as coach to come. He said, "Tu dekh le." Then there was Azhar said, "Aap chale jao, main kya karu?" So both ducked. So ultimately Ravi was the vice captain. Ravi and I went. And Ravi promptly shot down that suggestion of 3 umpires, saying umpires require consistency about wide, balls, etc. So we can't have different people coming in. But we had no reason to oppose television replays or blind decisions. So my point is that we were completely unprepared of what was happening, what to expect.
When I read the book and he said, I asked Ali for advice on what to do. I said, how can Ali Rani advise him on what to do with M.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela? So Ali could then you would make your job. But it was so like Jagmohan Dalmia. I didn't know him very well, but from what little I knew of him, it would be just like him to say, I know there is a meeting, but Sunil, you just look at it also.
Yeah, I mean, it asked me to speak with about the playing conditions. And I did speak to Ali, and we got to a situation where he was talking about these things. I said that, for example, switching the lights on as well.
Yeah.
I said that the team has to. I can't speak to you on behalf of the team because I'm not officially. I was there for commentary,
Right.
but I wasn't officially connected with the team at all. And also, I think one of the things that I kept. We kept going back and forth was that I said, look, no way should a bowler at the boundary be allowed to take a drink. Because I said, what's the point? Cricket is a game of stamina. If the fast bowler bowls one over, he goes to deep fine leg. He said, but no time is wasted. I said, no, it doesn't matter whether the time is wasted or not. I think, this is a game of stamina. Batters don't get that opportunity to have a drink at the end of every over. So why should a bowler on the boundary where the 12th man opposite player comes in and gives you the that's not Gatorade or Stamina or whatever it is, and but that didn't happen. And I think with everything, when you look at any breach or any bending of the rules, it just takes one instance, and once that is accepted without anybody doing anything, it becomes a flow, and that's what's happening. You find that at the end, a bowler can come in and bowl really at about 145, 150 kilometers per hour. And at the end of it, he bowls those 6 deliveries, he's got somebody waiting for him on the boundary with a drink. The batters don't have that. And speaking of, the playing conditions being decided only after the team landed, that was happening even during the time that we played. And the sort of biggest instance of that I remember is when we went to Australia in 1977-78, and I didn't know at that stage, I was vice captain, but I had no idea what had that this had happened. But it was the last test match we were playing at Adelaide, and I happened to be sitting next to Sir Don Bradman. This was in those days the host association would have a dinner for the teams on the eve of the match or on the third day, because the next day would be a rest day. And I happened to be sitting next to Sir Don Bradman, and Vasu Paranjpe, my other Indian captain, had told me that if you ever get to sit or speak to Don Bradman, you're not going to miss anything, and you're going to report to me what you've written, what you've spoken to him, what he has spoken, particularly what he has spoken to. So I'm talking to him, and he was basically asking about basically about the Indian political situation. And again, he said that several times about the fact that he was sorry that he had come out to wave to the Indian crowd that had gathered at the dockside in 1948 when the ship that was carrying the Australian team to England stopped over in Mumbai for a halt. So he was talking about that. And on my left, he was on my left, Sir Don. On his left was the president of the South Australian Cricket Association. On his left was Bishan Singh Bedi, the captain of the team. On his left was Paulie Umrigar, who was manager of the team. And, so in the middle of that dinner, Paulie Umrigar just leans back and says to me, "Hey Sunil, A1 ने पूछती कि विनू के मटो." So basically, for those who don't understand, what you are saying is A1. I didn't even know that's what A1 meant. What you are saying is ask Sir Don, how good was Vinu, like Vinu Mankar. How good was Vinu Mankar? So I'm like, and then before I could ask him anything, ask Sedon anything, Sedon turned to me and said, what language was that, Sunny? So I said, well, it's Gujarati, but you know the Parsis have a different way of speaking it. He said, yeah, because you know at the start of the tour, when Paulie and I were discussing playing conditions, Paulie was talking to me in that language. And I had to tell him, Paulie, I don't understand that language. So, anyway.
Akash, I want to say a few things. You mentioned about the role of a manager. Now, I was manager on this tour in '92. And it was a bit embarrassing. Because I realized that the manager is actually in a way, the leader of the delegation. In terms of protocol, he comes ahead of the captain and everybody else. And the embarrassment was that here's Ajit Wadekar, you know. But when it came to protocol, I sort of have a position different from him. For instance, I get a suite in a hotel, not Ajit. And only the captain and the manager would get suites. So I found it very embarrassing at times. Secondly, I realized at the end of the tour, I'm supposed to write a report on the team and the players. So, I have to write a report on, say, Azhar, Kapil, Ravi Shastri, and, you know, point out things like performance, discipline, commitment, hard work. Now, can you imagine somebody like me, who should not be doing this, writing a report on how good Kapil was in terms of discipline or Azhar or something. But fortunately, I realized that कुछ भी लिख दो, क्योंकि किसी ने पढ़ना तो है नहीं. So that's exactly what happened. I'm sure Professor is here. He's aware of this. He's been manager on many tours. So you do submit your report. It just goes into some file. Nobody reads it. So that saved me a lot of embarrassment.
See, now you know why Amrit can never write this sensational bestseller. Anybody else would have said, report mein maine ye kaha tha. But it's interesting, on that tour, 3 Indians scored hundreds. On that tour of South Africa, 2 of them are in this room. Kapil Dev isn't, Praveen Amre is, and we played a media game where, much to the sadness of some other journalists, Sunil Gavaskar scored 100. Because he was in partnership with a journalist from Kolkata.
Got him.
And all the other Kolkata journalists are now worried that this guy is going to get a scoop about batting with Sunil Gavaskar. So every 2 hours, someone would come out with drinks for Sunny, whether he wanted them or no. Someone would come running outside. They could do a story of taking drinks out. But Praveen was on that tour. Waited 5.5 hours for a spinner to come into bowl. I think he took 5.5 hours to make 80 runs and took about 3 minutes to go from 80 to 100 when the spinner came on.
Yeah, this was Durban. I think India was 38 for 4 on a green wicket. And Praveen on debut with 100. Fantastic. Praveen, where are you?
Yeah. I think it was one of the finest hundreds you can see. You're absolutely right. I think he really fought it out till 80 because they had a very good attack, fast bowling attack, tremendous attack. And then when Omar Henry came in, my God, I was thinking that even before Umar started his run-up, he was going down the pitch even before he released the ball. He was so far down the pitch. I don't think he allowed him any chance to land the ball. But what a 100! What a wonderful innings! I mean, so many years down the road, it's still up there in my mind's eye. It's the quality of that 100. Absolutely top class.
So another great 100 on that tour was Kapil Dev's. This was a Port Elizabeth Test match. India 31 for 6, Brett Schultz releasing rockets, and Kapil with 129 from there. I think it's one of the innings which is on par with his 175 maybe against Zimbabwe in the World Cup, but absolutely sensational innings.
I think I remember him hitting Alan Donald over the straight pavilion for a 6. So again, a terrific century.
That's about Pilcom. 1996, the World Cup came back to India after 1987. And I don't think everyone still is aware of all that happened to bring the World Cup back to India in 1996. I think we had a great chance of winning it as we did in 87, but that's a separate story. But there was so much that was happening around that 96 World Cup. There was India, Pakistan, was Sri Lanka involved as well? Not yes, Sri Lanka
Yes,
as well.
Sri Lanka too.
Of course, Sri Lanka as well.
Well, that was decided. That was, I think, the first time the Asian bloc sort of got together as a group. India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, 3 test playing countries. Because the World Cup was allotted through an election, and the members had to vote and decide where it went. So Mr. Dalmia, who was an expert at working numbers, realized that firstly we need these 3 with us, and then he approached all the associate members, all the Indians in various countries across the world, heading cricket bodies, were contacted, their support, sort of obtained in some manner or the other. And another great help was Zimbabwe, Mr. Chingoka, who became a lifelong friend of India, voted for India, I think, for 20 years after that. So a little bit of a struggle, but we got the World Cup. But there was an immediate challenge that the PILCOM had to pay a certain guarantee money to the ICC in order to retain the right to stage the World Cup. And there was no money. There was no money with the BCCI, Pakistan or Sri Lanka. So the way out was to sell television rights and get an advance pay of ICC and get along with the job. Now there were tenders put out twice and there were no bidders for the television rights for the World Cup.
Why is Rahul laughing?
Yeah. So that's how desperate the situation was. And after 2 rounds of unsuccessful bidding, there comes Mark Mascarenhas suddenly, after the process is over, saying that I can make a bid. Now the problem was that how do you get somebody new in, because this is against all the normal protocols of a tender. So but ultimately, as there was no other person willing to put up the money, it went to PILCOM, and after a lot of discussion and back and forth, he agreed. And he guaranteed and got the rights to the World Cup for $10 billion. I think that's less money, Rahul, now for one IPL game. So this was the entire World Cup rights sold for $10 million or something. So that's actually quite a story in those days.
And of course, as happened in '87, so also in '96, it was a tournament that the Western media had said was doomed from the start, and these guys can't organize it very well. And to think that both '87 and '96 actually turned out to be fantastic tournaments. And I think that was around when the tide started to shift, when India started asserting its power from being a country that said yes to everything, but India started asserting its power to the extent that apparently Amrit was sent to Scotland Yard to check out the security arrangements in England. Come on, tell us.
This is one of the most farcical stories you can talk about. Mr. Dalmia had this problem with England. He was very pissed off by their attitude, superior attitude of trying to show India down at every stage. So he did 2-3 things. First, as soon as he became ICC chief, after having sorted out the Australia and England, and he actually put India on the global map in terms of ICC. He got respect for India. Other countries started fearing India in terms of ICC and things. Secondly, when it came to England, they had this habit of sending a team to inspect our test matches and venues and grounds and hotels. So he said, अब हमारे को इंग्लैंड जाना है, तो जाके check करके आओ. So Mr. Jyoti Bajpayee, who was the treasurer, and me were sent on a 2-week trip to England to check whether Lords was fit enough for us to play.
You should have said the slope is not good enough.
हाँ, slope को ठीक करो, इसको सीधा करो. No, but we actually, with a lot of embarrassment, checked Lords, the dressing room, we went to other centers, Manchester, everywhere. But that was okay. Chalo, we had to make a point which we made. The ECB tolerated us. The other major story was, he said कि यहाँ पे कोई security threat है Indian team को. So the ECB must convince us they're doing everything right. Otherwise ये बड़ी problem हो जाएगी. किसी ने अगर सचिन को कुछ कर दिया, कुछ हाथ भी लगा दिया, then it will become a huge national issue. So convey your concern to England and get assurances from the police, headquarters, whoever. So we were taken to Scotland Yard to explain to us कि हमने कहा हमारा तो बहुत concern है यहाँ पे, हमको ये unhonorable threat आई है BCCI के पास, and that's why we come here. So please assure us कि क्या कर रहे हो? The Scotland Yard was surprised. And we had this meeting in the boardroom, the top executives and senior people trying to convince us that कुछ नहीं है. We've done all the background checks, the Sikh organizations have been checked, we've got people on the ground, we've done everything, there's no threat. And we were insisting we threatened. Now look at the funny situation. Who am I as a security guy talking to the top professionals there? And just to make a point, because we wanted it to be done like that.
I think there's a back story, much like that South Africa story. I wonder if Mr. Dalmia got that piece of that suggestion from somebody sitting between us.
Quite likely. Yeah, because here is another gentleman who's not very fond of the sort of superior attitude of the English cricket establishment.
It's changed. They've had to change. I thought one of the most path-breaking things, and I think we spent some time on that, was India going to Pakistan in 2004. Because I think in that period, 2004 to 2006, the people-to-people contacts were much closer. We discovered that people actually didn't dislike each other as much as we thought they did. But just going to Pakistan in 2004, India had gone since '89. And to go there and win a series and come back, I mean, I think along with 21, 2004, one of the most path-breaking Indian tours of Pakistan, fit to rank with 1971 and 2021. Tell us a little bit more about that Pakistan tour in 2004.
Firstly, Prof is here. Prof and I were part of a security recce team which went...
Were you sort of security specialist?
I don't know, I became a security specialist without knowing anything. So, Prof and me and Yashoda, we were sent to check out the security issues, and in this case there were genuine concerns about India going to Pakistan. And as soon as we reached, we expressed our concerns, genuine concerns, which Yasho articulated very strongly. He was VIP's security head, Ministry of Home Affairs, Kirti's elder brother. And they got the message कि ये problem है and they need genuine reassurances. But they were clear कि ये tour होगा. And I think very soon the president there passed orders कि whatever the Indian people want should happen, and he passed instructions down the line. And it happened. But now the outcome of this was, the security was unprecedented when he actually went there. Just to give an example, in Karachi, something like say from Chowpatty to Nariman Point. For the Indian team, the road was blocked off. Okay, no traffic. Secondly, on every major building there were snipers. Every crossing there was rapid action force, armored vehicles stationed. Ahead of the team bus, there's motorcycle outriders. In front of them, an armored car. पीछे भी motorcycle, उसके पीछे भी armored car. Team bus के ऊपर helicopter. So the players got scared. This is excessive. हम कहाँ आ गए? It's not this. The threat is not how bad the situation is. The security actually scared. Now there's another story to this. That there was this massive thing कि India का आना unlikely है because security से उनको परेशान है. बाद में India started winning, tour happened and India started winning. India won the one day and won the test matches. So Imran made a comment कि पहले security चाहिए थी Indian team को, अब security चाहिए Pakistan team को. So that was actually an exceptional tour. Cricket-wise, it was very good that we won the one days. I remember the ODI at Karachi, the first game, where CAF had that incredible catch of Shoaib Malik, which changed the game. It was a tight game, 350 or something. I think Nehra defended 8 or 9 in the last over. Anyway, team jeet gayi, andar aa gayi, dressing room mein. Now, Sunny mentioned that people like me were in the dressing room, we could absorb what is happening. So I think UV or somebody said, ये बच गए, गले में आ गई थी. Nehra said something else, which was at a different level. But वो आपको किताब में पढ़ना पड़ेगा कि उसने क्या बोला.
Some marketing notes you have now. You're saying किताब में पढ़ो.
No, but that was exceptional in terms of CAF's catch, which turned that around. Then there was obviously Viru with 300 in Multan, Dravid making 78 Pindi. The great cricket was fantastic. But I think the warmth and the positivity of the tour was one of the major features. Everywhere you went, you were very welcome. And after a while, it was like being at home, and there was no friction or anything at any stage.
So you talked about, there's just a couple of things I think that Amrit wants to talk about. You talked about Sunny, you talked about Raj Singh, you talked about Jagmohan Dalmia. Is there anyone else who in your book has pride of place? I did mention Tiger at the start. You got to know Tiger Baraudi very well over the years. You never actually went with him on a tour because he didn't like flying.
No, listen, he was much ahead of my time. We got to know him by chance because his nephew Amir was with us in college. Piyush and I, and we played together. We got to know him. And Tiger was in Delhi, so sometimes we'd go with Amir to his house and meet Tiger. And he would, just sort of tolerate us, talk to us for 5 minutes or something and go away. Now, there are certain things which struck us. We had this aura about Tiger. We had not seen much of him playing because he was, and there's no good footage available. So we had just heard and learned so much about him, but not actually see him play. But we got to know him, and I realized that over a long period of time, Tiger would never talk about himself. Never. I tried my best. Talk about Melbourne, talk about that 100 Leeds. He would never ever talk. He would talk about everybody else, happily, never about himself. He would have even come to umpire some of our social games. And he would umpire at both ends, for half an hour. And even on those social occasions at a cricket game, he would not touch a bat, not even hold it, not even knocking one or two balls, never. And Rasingji was a great friend of Tiger. And Rasingji once told me that Tiger was the best fielder ever in India. And I said, better than Azhar, Solkar, Abel, Sufi, so many others. So he said, no, Tiger was the best. So next time I met Tiger, I told him, Rajbhai was saying this about you. So Tiger just looked at me and said, you know Raj? I said, yeah, he's mad. So, cut up. But I think the funniest story about Tiger, which I've got in the book, has come from Sunny. I think he should narrate it, of what happened to him when he wanted to know, in a Moinatala game, how to address Tiger.
This was the team called Wazir Sultan Courts, where Tiger was the captain, the India player. Everybody else was a young player, a French player, emerging player. There were a few Ranji Trophy players in that, but none of us had played under Tiger, so we didn't know how to address him. So on the eve of the match, when there was a party thrown by the Wazir Sultan people, we were in a corner and we asked, we saw Tiger. The Tiger was there, Jaisima was there. So we asked Tiger. We decided amongst ourselves, how do we address him? So he didn't even come and say hello to us at that party. So we decided that whoever next day does well first thing, whether he was batting, supposing he's batting, and if he bat first and we come at lunchtime and the man is batting 60, 70, he will be the one who will ask Tiger how to address him. Or if it was a bowler who got a wicket, if you were fielding, if bowler got a wicket, when the bowler, when people come to congratulate, the bowler would ask him, how to address him. Do we address him as skipper, captain, bat, Tiger, Nawab Saab? All these things. We didn't know how to. As luck would have it, we were fielding, and the first wicket was a run out, which I effected. So I had a direct hit run out. So Tiger was, standing in the covers next to me. So as soon as the wicket fell, he sat down and he was tying his shoelaces. And so we were all around at a respectable distance, not very close normally. At this distance, and most of us were around. In those days, not the deep finding third man didn't come to celebrate the wicket. So there were about six of us around. And everybody looking at me and with eye contact. you ask, kind of thing. So I finally asked him, how do we call you? And it's just, sir, whatever, do we call you captain, skipper, Tiger. And Tiger just tied his shoelaces, looked up at me like this, turned, got up and went back to his position. So we never found out, what to call it. Yeah, on that interesting anecdote, I think we need to say thank you. So thank you everyone for coming. I think I'm saying that on behalf of Amrit. Maybe Amrit should say it himself too. But this conversation is a very good indicator of what you'll find in the book. Because there's no, I said, gyan given in the book. He's even prevented himself the luxury of saying that dressing room ke andar ye hota hai. So it's very much like what we discussed today, and I think you'll enjoy reading it.
Thanks everybody for coming. Sunny, thank you very much. Always an honor for you to release the book, not launch it. Very nice of you to have come. Prof. Diana is here, my colleague from the railways. Sanjay, Amrit, Praveen, who have been with us on tours. Rahul, everybody else. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for coming.